Welcome to the Model Health Show. This is fitness and nutrition expert Shawn Stevenson here with my beautiful, amazing co-host and producer, Jade Harrell. What's up, Jade?
What's up, Shawn?
How you doing today?
I am beamishing.
Tell me about that. That sounds beautiful. What is
Well, I am beaming because I'm flourishing.
You're beaming because you are flourishing.
I am.
I want to dig deeper into that. What is that? Tell me more.
Well, one of the advantages of being your producer and working so closely with you is that I get the information firsthand, and I've implemented practically everything. My life is totally different. It's made a difference in the lives of my family, my children, my grandparents. I am flourishing, and when people see me, they say, "You're beaming," and this is why.
Yes, I can attest to that too. You are definitely beaming,
Thank you.
I'm honored. Thank you, Jade, really. Well, today we've got an amazing show for you guys, and this is a component that has impacted both of our lives. And I was really driven to do this based on our recent conversation with the amazing Jackie Joyner-Kersee.
Right.
And remembering her kind of struggle in track and field and the Olympics and all the things and those type of things with dealing with asthma,
Right.
you know, and her being on the sidelines from time to time suffering with this. And this is something that her and I are going to be working on together.
Awesome.
But it is now Asthma Awareness Month.
Yes.
Right? And so I thought that we would actually package up a show to take it beyond awareness, but actually talk about real solutions. And this has a special spot for me as well, because I was one of those kids who grew up suffering from asthma.
Right.
And I remember being in the hospital, 9, 10 years old. And it was cool because they had Nintendo, which we didn't have one.
Right.
But it was not cool because just that environment and leaving there with 3 different types of inhalers and just kind of being dependent and scared, and kind of living that lifestyle. And I can stand here today happily saying that no longer affects me in any shape or form or fashion.
That's right.
And it's been many, many years since I've overcome that. And this is what I want to share today so that everyone else can have that same experience.
Yeah.
Because it is possible. And it's really, again, just talking about the underlying cause of the asthma. And so that's what we're going to get into. But
And
first,
though, in our story as well, my little boy started out with serious problems with breathing and asthmatic symptoms whenever he got a cold.
Yeah.
And so we've implemented and changed and looked at the underlying causes, and now he's asthma-free too.
yes, that's what I love to hear. And I've heard so many different stories like that. And it just really boils down to, because what you just mentioned is that's one of the triggers.
Right.
So someone were to get another type of infection, it would trigger an asthmatic situation.
Right.
So we're going to go through all that stuff. We're going to talk about the underlying cause, triggers, things to add in. And really what the show is about today is 5 steps to reverse and treat asthma naturally. But first, let's give a shout out to our show sponsor,
Gotta do it.
Head over to ONNIT/model for 10% off all of your health and human performance supplements. We're huge fans of the hemp force protein. The most bioavailable protein for the human body is going to be found in hemp. Plus, it tastes,
It's so good.
it's just so good. It's amazing. It tastes so good. And that's just kind of just an added benefit, because what we really are going for is to get the result. But having it be pleasurable just makes it all better. And definitely do yourself a favor. If you haven't tried the hemp force protein, you're going to love it, and chances are you're not going to go back to whatever you're using now.
Absolutely. And it delivered the help and healing that my grandmother needed.
Yeah.
Right out of surgery, having a crisis in the ICU, needed protein fast and in a way where she wasn't able to eat the food to get the amounts needed. But it's the hemp protein that has her back on her feet,
I love
I
it.
have to say, and she's getting her daily allowance, and she loves it.
I love it. And you sending me pictures
She
all
likes
along the
the
way.
Choco Maca.
Of
by
course.
the way. I'm just
Who
saying.
doesn't?
Well, you seem to be a vanilla acai.
Yeah, I do like that one.
But so we got
But,
another in the Choco Maca.
I love stories like that. So huge fans of the hemp force protein, and also huge fans of the Shroom Tech Sport.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
my pre-workout supplement based on cordyceps mushroom with 5,000 years of documented history of effectiveness in Chinese medicine. And it's one of those things that it gives you a nice, natural kind of present energy and not spiking you out like crunch juice, or energy, some kind of crazy, sports drink or something like that that's going to have you kind of freaked out and mess up your adrenals. It's not like that. This is safe, natural, and effective. So head over there and check them out. And you also get 10% off by using the code Model Health, or just going to onit.com/model and you're going to get 10% off either way.
You know,
All
it's
right?
funny. A friend of mine, Al McDonald, he says, so are there any discounts? Do you have any discounts for On It? I said, well, as a matter of fact, we do. He says, what about senior citizen, pre-war veteran? He was naming all this stuff. I said,
Yeah.
I tell you what, all you got to do is put the /MODEL.
And there you go, 10% off. So head over there and check them out, guys. Now let's go ahead and get into the iTunes review of the week.
This is hard to select because these have all been very wonderful, and I can't thank you all enough for sending in and adding the depth of what you're doing as you're taking in the podcast. So this one is from It's Fabulous, and it's a 5-star rating. It says fabulous. Love that. Absolutely fabulous. Shawn Stevenson is bringing it with this entertaining, educational, and empowering podcast. On the surface, it may seem like a health mastery show, but what Shawn is really doing is giving us a PhD education on life mastery, and I am an eager student. I listen at home, on my walk to school, work, on the tube, at the grocery store, everywhere. I can't get enough. I listen to the shows over and over again and gain new insights each time. And I'm loving my MSM morning internal bath. Gotta listen to know what I'm talking about. Jade is fabulous and fun, and as a co-host and producer, shout out for excellent sound quality. That's for the whole team, I have to say. I say this show is fabulous because if you listen and follow the advice, you will live a fabulous life and look absolutely luscious doing it. Listening in London, Arnetta.
What's up, London?
What's going on,
I
London?
love that. Thank you so much for leaving that review, and thank you everybody for leaving the reviews over on iTunes. Means the world to us, truly does.
That's awesome.
That actually
I bumped the mic, sorry.
Okay. That actually made Jade's day. You know, when she was going through and looking at the reviews today, she actually had to hold back tears from a couple of them. And so just thank you guys so much. And we promise to keep delivering. I'm speaking for you too. Delivering the best of the best health and wellness information possible. And so let's go ahead and dive into our topic of the day. Today we're talking about 5 steps to reverse and treat asthma naturally. And what I want to begin with is just sharing some of the statistics, because this is actually going to help to point to what the real problem is. So in the United States, more than 22 million people have asthma, okay? More than 22 million people have asthma, including 6 million children. According to the CDC, in 1980, 3.6% of the United States children had asthma, okay? This is in 1980. This is the CDC, okay? Now, currently, it's over 9.4% of the children in the United States have asthma. This is nearly tripled since 1980, okay? Nearly tripled. Now, I'm bringing this up to talk about, this was published in the New York Times and many other places, and it was really titled The Medical Paradox of Asthma. And it says that medical paradox, asthma doctors puzzled. And it says, despite a growing arsenal of powerful drugs to relieve asthma and a deeper understanding of asthma attacks, more people are dying from the ailment than ever. Allergists say that they are baffled by the trend, which has been reported in the United States and abroad in the last 10 years. While asthma deaths remain relatively rare, their frequency in the United States has doubled in a decade. No one should die from asthma, said Dr. William Franklin of the Harvard Medical School. Here is a disease that is totally treatable. We should be seeing a sharp decline in deaths, yet we are seeing a rise. Now, I'm bringing this all up and kind of going through that statement word for word to share the fact that our medical paradigm, our conventional medicine, is really on top of understanding the symptoms.
Right.
And understanding treating symptoms, but they're baffled by what is the root cause? Why are people not getting better? And again, it's because we're looking at treating symptoms instead of removing the underlying cause in the first place.
Right.
So let's move on. So in 2010, these were the latest statistics that I could get my hands on. 18.7 million adults had asthma. That's equal to 1 in 12 adults. 7 million children had asthma. That's equal to 1 in every 11 children. And about 9 people die from asthma each day.
Wow.
And so that was around 3,500 people who died from asthma more recently in these statistics in 1 year. And the issue is that it's getting worse. And even just reading this is a little tough because my daughter, her uncle, actually died from an asthma attack as well. And this was many years ago. And, you know, so just having that real world experience of knowing someone who's actually died from this.
Right.
Now, just to kind of wrap up some of these statistics, in the last decade, the proportion of people with asthma in the United States grew by nearly 15%. Okay, so conventional medicine thinks they have this figured out, but it keeps growing. And in 2009, asthma caused 479,000 plus hospitalizations, 8.9 million doctor visits, and 1.9 million emergency department visits. And I've been there. I've been in the emergency room for myself and for my son many years ago when he was smaller, and I didn't understand any of this stuff. And I'm honored to say also my son is no longer dealing with this as well. And the last statistic that I want to share is that the International Study of Asthma and Allergies in Childhood stated that children in North America are more than twice as likely to have asthma and asthma-related symptoms than kids in the Asia-Pacific region, for example.
Really?
Right? Twice as likely. It appears that as countries become more, quote, westernized, the rates of asthma skyrocket accordingly. Okay? So a lot of this stuff and some of the interesting statistics that I came across were showing that children who are kind of living and eating their indigenous diet, living in natural conditions, asthma is very rare. It's as we grow in our, I guess, being civilized, we start to see more of these symptoms show up. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what's driving these symptoms. And first, let's start with what is asthma in the first place? What is it, right? So let's actually break it down. So what asthma really is it basically it's caused by inflammation of the airways, all right? So what that means, what that breaks down to meaning is that an asthma attack, when that occurs, the muscles surrounding the airways become tight and the lining of the air passages begin to swell. All right, so if you can picture like your airways being like a tube, like a hose, and then all of a sudden the hose itself becomes thicker inside. And so now the passageway for that hose, maybe it started off the size of a quarter, now it's the size of a straw.
Oh, wow.
And then you throw in on top of that the response of mucus or an overproduction of mucus, and that takes the straw into the size of maybe a pin. And this is when somebody can potentially lose their life.
Exactly.
Right?
They're suffocating.
Now, and I'm talking about like a pin, like a needle, right?
Oh,
and this is what people are struggling with. And please understand, asthma is one of those situations where you literally can't breathe and there's nothing seemingly happening to you on the outside. Like nobody's choking you out, but you feel like there's a, you know, Andre the Giant or something is like sitting on top of you and you can't breathe. You know?
Smothering.
Shout out to Andre the Giant,
Right.
WWF.
Yes. It's
Yeah,
Andre.
So this basically reduces the amount of air that can pass through. Now, these muscles are controlled by nerves. And what triggers the nerves to act this way inappropriately is really variable in nature. And the triggers can be primarily allergic, they can be primarily emotional, or they can be induced by exercise or respiratory infection, which is what we talked about earlier, dealing with your son. You know, he would get an infection of another type of some kind of a cold, and it would kick on the asthma symptoms.
And we'd be in
and
the
they could take
PICU.
something from bad to far worse.
Yeah. It was frightening.
And asthma is considered, bottom line, guys, it's considered an inflammatory disorder. That's what it is. It's an inflammatory disorder. Most times, people kind of look at allergies and asthma as something that's brought on by the environment. And I remember when I radically transformed my health and my body and my diet, and I would still get this occasional like hay fever, which would bring on asthma symptoms. And it would happen every season, you know, when the weather changes. And so this is when I met my then girlfriend, who's my wife now, and my mother-in-law, who was already so evolved in her thinking about illnesses. And so I went over to see them, and this is when I was dealing with the hay fever. And this was actually the last time I had went to a hospital. So this was maybe 10 years ago. And so I'm just kind of telling her about my problems, like, yeah, you know, it's the weather. And she looked at me.
I know the look.
And she said, okay, that's interesting. So is the problem outside or is the problem inside you? And it kind of baked my noodle a little bit, you know, just like, wait a minute, it's me, it's inside of me. It's something going on within myself. And little did I know, I was still consuming on a regular basis some of these pro-inflammatory substances that were making me more susceptible to the infection, which I've not had in 10 years.
Sure. Well, inflammatory substances with an inflammatory disorder kick off a response that's going to be ridiculously inflammatory.
Exactly. What I want to share with everybody, let me give an example. Poison ivy, right? There's songs about it, right? But poison ivy, real talk, it's one of those things that causes an allergic reaction. You know, your body can break out in and really nasty rashes. And so what it is, and we have this disconnection about what is happening. You know, like I touch this thing and it does this to me. What is it about the plant that does this? And what it is the particular, it's like fatty acid like compounds in it. Okay, so basically they're fatty acids, all right? And they don't really vibe with the human body, okay? So about 85% of people are going to have an allergic response to it. And the issue is that it's not the substance. It's your body's response to the substance.
Right.
That's what
like
it is.
Like you said, is the problem out here or is it within?
So just to
That's
wrap
an
that
aha
whole
moment.
just to wrap that whole point up is that the main cause of asthma is the underlying chronic inflammation and this kind of indiscriminate reaction to different conditions. Now, when it boils down to the practicality of this whole situation is looking at how is the body responding with this hypersensitivity to the environment? Like you live in the world, why am I allergic to the world?
Yeah.
You know?
Basically.
And what it really boils down to is first and foremost, what's going on with your body's immune system. Okay.
Back to the immune system.
And research published in the Expert Review of Clinical Immunology states that asthma is a heterogeneous disorder characterized by chronic inflammation of the respiratory airways that can be triggered by allergen exposure or by other mechanisms, namely autoreactive/autoimmune. This autoimmune hypothesis is further supported by asthma's response to immunosuppressive drugs. Okay, so when you suppress the immune system, asthma symptoms decline, all right? But this is something, again, our immune system, we want it to be doing its job, but we just wanted to recognize self from foreign problem.
There we go.
Okay, but this is speaking to the fact that asthma really has a lot of autoimmune type components. So basically the body is, in essence, hurting itself. It's attacking itself because it's not distinguishing between you and other. Okay, so we have to make sure that the immune system is hyper intelligent, right? And it's operating in the way that it should be.
So you know what I pictured?
What's that?
If my immune system can't distinguish between me and other, I've pretty much melded those things together, morphed those things together pretty well.
Yeah.
There needs to be a clear distinction of what's real and natural and whole about me so that there's a clear understanding of which way to go.
Right, exactly.
That's a motivator.
Yeah, your immune system is really wired up to protect you and to keep you alive. You know, not just alive, but thriving, you know. But in our world today, we are surrounded by conditions that have never existed before in human history.
Right.
So the immune system can get a little stressed.
Right. Confused. You know? Oh, my poor
and so
immune system.
What this really boils down to, and this is where the conversation really, this is where we get into the we'll say the nuts and bolts of today's episode, is the fact that your gut health is directly related to your immune function. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but upwards of 70 to 80% of your immune system tissue is located in your digestive system, okay? Upwards of 80% of your immune system is located in your gut. So when we're talking about a hyperactive sensitivity to the environment, because of our immune system, it has a lot to do with what's going on in your belly.
Sure.
All right? And what's the biggest influencer of what's happening in our belly is the food we put into our mouth.
Right.
Now it starts to all come together. Now we've talked about some of the statistics, and we've talked about what is asthma. What is it? You know, it's an inflammatory disorder, and it's linked to autoimmunity. And now we've talked about the fact that your immune system is highly responsible for regulating this whole process. So now let's go ahead and get into the 5 steps to reverse and treat asthma naturally. Step 1 is to remove the underlying cause of the asthma. Remove the underlying cause of the asthma. Sounds like Captain Obvious?
Right.
You know, but
well, get rid of the junk.
So one of the most common causes of chronic inflammation in this kind of setting in the body is due to the presence of hidden food allergies, okay? And also some of this stuff applies to chemical sensitivities as well. So things like sulfur dioxide and sulfites, for example, monosodium glutamate, also known as MSG, and also yellow food dye is one of those big triggers that's highly reactive for asthmatics. So now let's talk about food sensitivities and the inflammation that can result. So if we're gonna really take care of this and knock this asthma situation out of the park for good, we need to look at the big 4 culprits, okay? These are the big 4. Number 1 is wheat and similar grains. Wheat has compounds known as lectins, and in particular, we're going to talk about gliadin, which is a wheat protein, and this zonulin reaction. So zonulin are proteins found in the intestinal cells. Now, they are triggered by various foreign bacteria such as E. coli and salmonella can activate zonulin, and this is the trigger to trigger diarrhea, to have more fluid get into your digestive tract to flush you out and to get rid of this potential hazard.
That's another
right?
defense, huh?
So that's all fine and dandy. Now, here's the issue: is that the wheat protein gliadin mimics the effects of these foreign bacteria, and it too triggers zonulin, but the function isn't a one-way thing. Okay. So it can basically open up the gut lining, okay, create more permeability of your gut lining so that moisture, water can flush into your system, but also it allows for intestinal contents to gain entry into your bloodstream. In particular, it goes in the opposite direction. It gets into inappropriate places.
Right.
And this is what can set off an autoimmune response. Because at this point, say, you've been consuming this gliadin, and there's some protein compounds in another food that you've been eating. Maybe it's eggs.
Right.
And now that protein structure has made its way into your bloodstream, and your body's like, your immune system's like, you're not supposed to be here in this fashion. We're supposed to have broken you down before you got assimilated into the bloodstream. How you in here in this kind of whole fashion? So your immune system is going to go and attack those foreign proteins. All good. We're fine. We can eat our waffles and not have a problem. Waffles and eggs. But the issue is that any tissue that looks similar to that protein structure that snuck its way in there, so that protein structure could look similar to your thyroid. And so now your immune system is going to go and attack your thyroid gland. That's called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition.
That's bad.
Right? Or if it goes and attacks your tissue in your knees. Now we're talking about arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, for example, and on and on and on. If it's attacking the tissues in your lungs, we're talking about one of the underlying causes of asthma symptoms, right? And it's due to this gut permeability caused by food sensitivities, food allergies. And by the way, we just had on Dr. William Davis, the incredible author of Wheat Belly, New York Times bestselling book.
Yes.
And during that show, we mentioned the fact that zonulin was found to be active in 100% of the people who consume wheat.
Everybody.
100%. But you might not have symptoms, and and that's fine. It's not saying again that this is the worst thing ever to eat. Have you had a Twinkie? Because that means it's not as bad as a Twinkie. So possibly it depends on the person.
Yeah.
But the reality is 100% of the people it's affecting. It's just kind of to what degree.
Exactly.
So if you're dealing with asthma, or if your child is dealing with asthma, and this is what I really want to point the attention to, is we've got to take care of our kids. We've got to take care of our kids. And this is something for us, if we really want to put this to the side completely, pull this food out.
Pull the
Test
weight
it.
out.
Just do a test. Give it 30 days. 30-day test. Or pull it out of your child's diet. And then you can add it back in later and see what happens.
Well, you can certainly see the difference, but that wheat, the bread, the grains for children are real challenging one to remove. And so it's easier said than done, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And if you have to do it a little bit at a time, that's kind of what we had to do, was to start taking more of it out. I just stopped making sandwiches altogether. And they didn't go for that very well at first.
But
there were protests.
We've done shows talking about.
But the cereal, all of those things that are directed toward, marketed for kids, the mac and cheese and all of that.
And guess what? I would eat mac and cheese for a meal.
Yeah,
Just
right.
open a box of Velveeta shells and cheese, and there you go.
Right. Oh gosh, who knows what that cheese was? But when we finally got to a place, it is. But when we finally got to a place where it was not the norm, a huge difference in the children.
Yeah.
A huge difference.
And we've done shows talking about how to help to change the eating habits of your family. And it's really more so about pleasure and fun, and not like I'm taking something away. We do need to have alternatives. So we'll put a link in the show notes to past episodes that this is going to be applicable for. So number one is wheat and similar grains. There are similar lectin-like compounds, because somebody just will go gluten-free. So they'll eat these other types of grains that could have potential other nefarious activities in your body. So I would encourage you to pull out all of that stuff. Stop eating these kind of processed foods. Just, again, give it a test for 30 days and see how you feel.
Right.
Right? All right. So bottom line, these things cause systemic inflammation. With systemic inflammation, your body's already inflamed internally, and it could just be a low-grade fever. Then you get exposed to the allergen, and guess what? Now we have real asthma symptoms. Right? It's really as simple as that. So that's number one of the big four. Number two is legumes. Right? Peanut allergies. Have you heard of it? Like, there's classrooms. People can't even go into.
You can't bring it in the building.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
because it's serious. Peanuts are a legume. Right? So it's in this bean family. And it's because there's certain compounds that are highly toxic to the human body. Now, I'm not saying peanut butter is amazing.
So
I mean, I think it unlocks superpowers in some people. So all this stuff is going to be, it's going to depend on you and your unique genetics. And it is what it is. So peanuts, the same thing. I've seen people react badly with like Brazil nuts, which are amazing. It just depends on the person.
Cashews for me.
Cashews, everything around me. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the legumes overall. So I'm talking about the beans, right? So beans good for your heart. The more you eat, the more you...
Yes, you do.
You know?
Toot,
and
beep,
why
beep.
is that? It's well known that it's going to cause gastrointestinal distress. And one of the big components is a compound in there called amylopectin C. When we talked about this with Dr. William Davis, amylopectin A, which is found in wheat, is highly digestible, like very, very quick, raises your blood sugar very fast. Amylopectin C is something that it takes quite a while. Like the bacteria in your gut have a little bit of a party. Right? They get drunk, basically, and start causing all kinds of gaseous behavior.
Right, and they're having fun making all these noises.
So, and also there are phytoestrogens in many of these beans. In particular, we talk about soybeans. And and again, this is not just conjecture what I'm talking about. This is some of the data that I'm sharing as well. Study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition with 1,601 young adults showed that soy beverages increased asthma symptoms and overall risk of asthma. All right there in black and white. This was published again in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. All right, so this increased asthma symptoms consuming a soy beverage.
What are some examples of soy beverages that?
Soy milk.
Well,
you know, soy milk. And this is,
What do you
again, this
know?
is not something that's a traditional food. When somebody would argue, well, soy is a great source of protein. Look at the cultures who consume it. They live longer than anybody.
Right.
They're not drinking soy milk. They're not eating soy hot dogs.
They're not having tofu burgers.
Yeah, this is, it's gone way too far, right? And also the soy milk is also, like I said, it's a strong phytoestrogen. And some of the research indicates that it could be equivalent, an 8-ounce glass of soy milk, equivalent to taking 2 birth control pills.
Stop.
There you
And
have
so
it.
you wonder
And by the
why
way,
our systems are off.
and I'll put the I did some research on this, and I'll put that in the show notes as well if you want more information on that. So some people who are huge fans of soy, I'm not saying that soy is bad in and of itself. It's just the way that we consume it. And you also need to respect the fact that this is used more traditionally like a condiment rather than a meal or an entree of nutrition.
Right.
Okay, so the beans also have lectins. So black beans, kidney beans, all these things, it depends on the person. And what we need to do is understand more of a traditional ways of having these things, which they need to be soaked, which helps to essentially dissolve some of these what are known as enzyme inhibitors, which kind of lock up that plant's power. And by the way, the bean is sort of like a seed of a plant, right? And so it doesn't want to get digested in your body. It wants to get pooped out somewhere so that it can grow more, right? And so, but beans are particularly tricky for the human digestive tract, okay? Other animals might be able to get by with it. We need to kind of, cook them quite a bit, soak them, preferably sprout them. And this is just gonna also increase the nutrition that we're gonna get from it in the first place, but also limit some of the potential immune problems that we can see from that.
Right,
So,
but we still got to be kind to beans because it's because of the beans' resiliency that they're able to grow under some of the most difficult conditions in our earth. So
yeah, so this is a food that can help you to survive, but not necessarily thrive, depending on the person, depending on your unique genetics.
Well, the bean is the seed part. So like you said, when it's sprouted, then it has given the life we were hoping it to deliver.
And what we want to do is, again, if you're dealing with asthma or your child or somebody that you love, pull this stuff out temporarily. Again, just pull it out because there's thousands of other foods that you can have.
There are a lot,
All right. So that's number 2 on the list. Number 3 is dairy. And this one is serious. This was the thing for me. I was drinking my non-homogenized, organic, grass-fed milk. It was still pasteurized, though.
Oh, did you? I was going to say,
it was still
you drinking the raw?
pasteurized. Yeah. Okay. And I had all this mucus production.
They
and this was, I'm going to share something that's gross.
Okay.
All right. I can't
TMI.
believe it just came up to share this
Okay,
now. I wasn't
all
going to
right.
share this.
We're here.
When I
we're
was
here.
dating my now wife,
Yeah. I love
but my girlfriend at the
You
time,
won that.
I used to actually have this little, like a spit cup. Like I'd keep a cup from somewhere and I would spit in it because I would kind of have this mucus, you know? It's just like, how does she deal with that?
Right.
It was so gross. She's like, well, I guess, you know, he looks pretty good anyway. So, but I don't know.
I'm
I
sure
don't
it
know
was
what
more
it was.
than that to tolerate a
I know.
spitty, snotty.
It's just, I don't know what would possess me to think that that was normal at the time. But it's because
but we do see.
most of the year I felt amazing. But during that quote time of year,
Right.
it really became noticeable. And one of the things was I was jamming my organic high fiber cereals and my milk.
Right.
You know.
Two of the top.
And on top of that, again, that was just, I would only do that late at night. The rest of the day, I'm eating whole real foods, but that was kind of like my late night thing. And we talked about this on past shows as well.
Right,
Like that
right.
was kind of the last little addiction
Yeah.
that I was dealing with. And so the mucus production, that's one of the big issues. And mucus basically serves to protect the epithelial cells in the respiratory system, the gastrointestinal system, and others. A major function of this mucus is to protect your body against infectious agents, namely bacteria and viruses. So it has an important purpose. The average human body produces about 1 liter of mucus a day, all right? Now, the problem is when inflammation and the immune system response is heightened and you're gonna have a hyperproduction of mucus. And one of those foods that tends to trigger more mucus production is pasteurized dairy.
So can I ask a quick question then? If mucus is a response to bacteria and is protecting us, then if we're taking in more milk, that means there's a lot of that in there and our body's responding to it?
We have to understand that milk is a bodily fluid. And I'm not saying that this is good or bad because this is how mammals survive,
Sure.
really.
Well,
this
yeah.
is what helps us to grow.
Right.
So being a bodily fluid, it's going to have pus and milk, and blood.
Yes.
And all manner of factors that are going on with that animal producing it. And we need to understand it's not you are what you eat. You are what you ate.
Yeah.
Right? So all this stuff matters. Now, there was a study done in 2006, and it was published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, and it found that children who drank raw milk had significantly less instances of asthma, eczema, and hay fever than those who drank pasteurized milk. Raw milk cut the histamine reaction by more than 50%. So if somebody is interested in consuming dairy, then they might want to look into raw dairy. Now, I'm not advocating raw dairy. There are some potential other issues there when we talk about potential pathogens that can be carried along there. I mean, there's a lot of different things, and even just a lot of people don't have the capacity to digest milk very well past babyhood, when you're not a big baby.
True.
But for some people, who have the genetics to handle it well, it can be a great food source. And as you can see in the research, raw milk can actually be a preventative measure for asthma. Now, I would advocate personally to just pull all dairy out temporarily because of the known immune response, and also because you're dealing with a lot of foreign proteins, a lot of glyconutrients, a lot of fatty acids that are coming from this animal source, and most times it's coming from multiple animals. So it's really hitting your immune system up.
Yes,
And your immune
hitting it
system has to
hard.
do a lot of work to kind of recognize what's going on there. So, and also the mucus response. So when I pulled dairy out after that talk with my mother-in-law, right? After that talk, when she was like, is it out there or is it in you? You know how this stuff tends to work. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
I came across something that had me point in the direction of like, let me pull this dairy out. This might be causing a problem. I stopped drinking dairy or consuming dairy from that point, and I've never had a problem since.
Haven't looked back.
So this was my big trigger food, guys, and this is a real personal experience. So that's number 3 on the list. The last one is processed foods slash sugar of the big 4. Now, the chemical additives, which we talked about before, monosodium glutamate, the food dyes, and all those type of things that cause asthmatic symptoms. This is one of the big reasons why we want to avoid processed packaged foods. And there was a study that was published in the Lancet Respiratory Medicine, and it found that, and this was in Zimbabwe that the study was done, and it states that, and I'm just going to read this word for word.
Okay.
We found that the prevalence of reversible airways obstruction to be 5.8% more in the richer urban children. 3.1% in poor urban children, and 0.1% in rural children. Okay. In these poor countries, there is a vast difference between urban and rural eating habits, and therefore a great difference in asthma rates. While in Western countries, there is no real difference between rural and urban eating habits and asthma rates. Another likely factor is that rural populations get far less treatment with drugs and especially antibiotics than rich urban populations.
That's true. There we go.
In northern Harare, the only study area in which white children were found in this particular study in Zimbabwe, the prevalence of reversible airways obstruction was similar in white kids, which is 5.3%, and black kids, which is 5.9%. Here in the United States, it's radically different. Okay, we have almost a twofold difference in white children and Hispanic children, and also black children as well. And this is because, well, as you can see here, the conditions are pretty similar for all of them here, but in the United States, there is going to be less access to higher quality whole foods for many people in the quote urban areas. So this is just one of the things I wanted to point out, and to understand that as we kind of move up in our quote being civil, we start to run into more instances of asthma, where we're looking at 5.8% of the kids in the richer urban area versus 0.1% of the children in rural area expressing asthma. It's rare. It's extremely rare. Whereas today, now we're living in a situation where it's 1 in every 11 kids here.
Wow.
Now, with the research at hand disclosing the dangers associated with fast food, serving fast food to your kids at any circumstance is negligent. This is something we need to take a good look at.
Right.
And I just seen this recently. My son, he has baseball tournaments now, every weekend, takes up the whole weekend.
Right,
and afterwards, it could be 8, 9 o'clock at night. And parents are just like, I didn't have time to cook. So what do? We stop at the drive-thru, and it's a very difficult situation to be in. But this just calls for understanding this is not for the weak-hearted,
Parenting isn't.
Until we're able to continue changing society like we are now, with shows like this, with the movement that's happening right now, where there is access to more convenience type of healthy foods, healthy options. More and more of this is showing up. But until that point, you have to have the audacity and the courage to say no.
Yeah.
Because you understand that you are directly harming your child. And I truly feel that at some point here in the near future, we're going to look back at this as something that it's a form of child abuse.
Yeah.
And so, now with that said, I do understand.
Right.
I definitely understand. I've been at many
look at the messages that are going to them.
Yeah.
See, so
Happy
you're not
Meal,
just
happy
clowns,
free
parties,
toy. Right. I've been at many fast food playland.
toys.
Right. But the reality is, I knew that it wasn't the right thing, but I didn't know why. Now today, you know why. All right. So let's talk about some common asthma triggers really quickly. Animals, which is the pet hair, pet
Allergies,
dander, dust, changes in weather, most often cold weather, chemicals in the air or in food, which in particular pesticides. And there was a study published in the American Journal of Industrial Medicine citing that farm workers, women in this study, farm workers were having radically higher incidences of asthma symptoms being exposed to pesticides on the farm. Exercise, mold, pollen, respiratory infections such as the common cold, strong emotions, aka stress, and also tobacco smoke. So these are
Makes
triggers.
sense.
These are not the underlying cause. The underlying cause is systemic inflammation we've been talking about, and we went through the big four already. So the best treatment for asthma at this point we're understanding is to remove the underlying cause of the asthma, right? To remove the underlying cause. But once we've done that, which is your greatest leverage point, now we're going to move into step 2, which is to add in supportive preventative nutrition. Dr. James Duke, who was the ex-chief botanist in the USDA, views camu as a superb herb to treat asthma. He compared a huge selection of botanicals, and camu turned out to be the top in effectiveness for treating asthma.
Love it.
Camu berry, this is a Amazonian, quote, superfood, loaded with antioxidants, phytonutrients, and it has 30 times more vitamin C than do oranges. Okay? And so vitamin C is one of those kind of powerful immune system fortifiers. And instead of going for something that's cool, oranges are cool, how about we get the best thing?
Right. And you don't need a lot.
And he studied and really went in depth. I mean, he was on the dark side for a while with the USDA. Then he became a Jedi Knight and started to study the botanicals and found that camu camu is the top botanical on the planet for treating asthma. All right, so this is not something to take lightly. So how much and how do you use it? What you're gonna find is it's gonna be in powdered form. You wanna get it from a reputable source, organic and or wild crafted. And you also wanna make sure that the company you're buying it from is extracting it in an intelligent fashion. So most often what we're gonna look for is something that's freeze dried, most likely. Okay, so it's not exposed to high heat and damaging the really sensitive phytonutrients that are gonna be found in there. All right, so that's what you wanna do as far as looking for it. How much to use? I'd say about a teaspoon a day. A little bit goes a long way. And because it's so high in vitamin C, if you take a lot, it's going to cause it's going to hit your bowel tolerance limit. It's going to pull a lot of moisture to your bowels and it can cause diarrhea, right? So about a teaspoon a day, you can maybe split it up. You can make a little lemonade with it where you squeeze some fresh lemons, maybe some oranges go in there, and maybe a little bit of stevia and some high quality water. You can do it like that, or put into your juices or superfood smoothies.
You never even know it's there.
So there you go. So that's number one. Camu camu is an important supportive preventative for asthma. Number two is aloe. Aloe vera contains natural steroid compounds and other compounds that inhibit or reduce inflammation. There was a study done in Japan in the 1980s that showed that compounds in aloe cause an increase in the removal of particles that may trigger asthma.
Nice.
Right? And this is part of the reason that it's so effective. Is an effective, quote, detoxifier in helping to remove potential problems from your system. So how much and how do you use it? I recommend using the real food. So like getting that aloe vera leaf, it looks like a dinosaur tail, right? And you cut a piece of that off, you fillet the skin off. The skin, like close to the skin, is a very powerful like purgative, so it can cause diarrhea. So you wanna make sure you don't put any skin in there. But the gel inside, you throw it into a blender and you can make that lemonade we just talked about. You blend that with the lemonade, right? Or you can throw it into a superfood smoothie, something of that nature. It's
about how much? So we cut off a piece?
So maybe I'd say a 2x2 piece.
Okay.
Not much. And there are many aloe vera products on the market. I personally have never used any of them. And again, it just really is based on how are they extracting it.
Right.
Are they paying attention to the volatile compounds that are in there and destroying them through their extraction process? So this is why I recommend using the whole fresh leaf, and it's very inexpensive.
Easy to find too.
That's aloe. Let's move on. Number 3 on the list. There's so much anecdotal evidence around this one, and so I wanted to mention it. Not a lot of clinical studies, and I really like to base the things that I talk about on solid science. This one is just Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine. This was his go-to, so apple cider vinegar. And I've seen this anecdotally personally as well in my life with my son dealing with a heavy cough or a little bit of wheezing and having him take that ACV shot, apple cider vinegar shot with maybe a little bit of honey mixed in there, and helping to see the symptoms reduce from that. And so another reason that I would bring up the apple cider vinegar is the fact that it does contain a lot of minerals and trace minerals. So potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A. You're gonna find little bits of this because it is more of a food source of nutrition versus a drug. So anything that you can look for that's going to have these phytonutrients built into the system is gonna be something more intelligent to go for than something that's synthetic, all right? So ACV, and for that one you would use maybe a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with maybe 4 ounces of water. You can mix in maybe a teaspoon of honey. So like a pourable honey. You can warm it up a little bit if you want to, or just drink it with a cool water.
I like to add Concord grape. It's tasty.
Well, that's some new stuff.
Yeah.
So
good stuff.
This is that's the way to consume the apple cider vinegar, and it can just be used kind of like a daily tonic. All right, let's move on. So the next one here is, buckle your seatbelts. It's gonna sound a little crazy, but fish oil.
Yeah, we've
Research
heard
from
that. We heard that.
Research from Indiana University found that in this particular study, the post-exercise lung function of participants, and these were adults with mild to moderate persistent asthma, their post-exercise lung function improved by about 64%. And their use of emergency inhalers decreased by 31% when they consumed a diet supplemented with fish oil 3 times a week.
What kind of fish and how
There
much
you
of
go.
the oil?
Right? So I'll get to that in a moment.
All right.
So the typical Western diet in our society in particular is very high, 20 to 25 times more in omega-6 fatty acids, which are the more pro-inflammatory fatty acids, than omega-3 fatty acids, when we ideally want to have like a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio at the most.
Of which to which?
Of omega-6 to omega-3 respectively.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do we do? What do we do in a situation like that? And we've talked previously on many shows about how this happens, how people are getting so much exposure to omega-6s. But we're talking about today, what can we do about it? And one of the things is found, and let's just talk about it, how much. 3.2 grams of EPA and 2 grams of DHA daily was what was used in the study. So one of the key findings in the study was that while on the supplemented fish oil, it was 3.2 grams of EPA and 2 grams of DHA daily, so that's what you want to look for. Air pro-inflammatory cells and markers, which are responsible for airway inflammation and subsequent airway obstruction, were reduced in mucus gathered from the test subjects. Okay? So get yourself some high quality fish oil. I'll put in the show notes the fish oil that I use or the omega-3 supplement that I use. I'm not even going to say that it's
fish oil
necessarily fish oil. This could be, anchovies or maybe a smaller fish, and it wouldn't be called a quote fish oil. But what we're looking for is that appropriate amount of EPA and DHA. So I'll put in the show notes. So head over to themodelhealthshow.com and get access to today's episode. And you'll find out which fish oil I use or which omega-3 supplement I use.
Right.
All right, let's move on. So the next one here is bee pollen. Bee pollen. Again, a lot of anecdotal information here. And what's said is that taking bee pollen proactively, especially during this change of seasons when people tend to have more allergy symptoms and asthma symptoms, by the way, you want to get it from your local area because this is an adaptogen food. It helps you to adapt to your environment. And this is loaded with glyconutrients, essential fatty acids, B vitamins, DNA, and RNA, right? Genetic information. You're not going to get that in a ding dong or a Hostess cupcake. You're not going to find DNA in there, but it's in bee pollen. Now, there are also steroidal hormone compounds that are found in bee pollen. And what has been found is that it reduces the production of histamine.
Nice.
Okay, so this kind of histamine reaction that we hear about. So how much? Well, first of all, make sure it's local. How much? Maybe couple teaspoons a day.
And that's
you can
easy
just eat
to
it straight.
put it. You can, or you can add it to some of their snacks.
Yeah.
The children call it bee candy.
Bee
they
candy,
thought it was
right.
great. Yeah.
Flow like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Bee candy.
Where did it come from? Oh, he ate bee pollen. There you go. So I'm just gonna breeze through the next couple ones.
Shouts out
another
to
one.
the wonderful hero, Muhammad Ali,
Greatest
for
of all
many.
times.
Greatest of all time.
Nettles. Nettles is another thing to look into. So nettles is a nourisher and immune system booster, packed with vitamins, minerals, anti-inflammatory compounds, boosts immune system, and reduces allergies. Research cited by the University of Maryland Medical Center states that nettles' capacity to prevent and lessen allergy symptoms is through its ability to reduce the amount of histamine the body produces in response to an allergen. So there you have it. This can be used, some doctors recommend taking a freeze-dried preparation of stinging nettles. It's called stinging nettles or nettles, well before the hay fever season starts. So this is something to do proactively. It's a preventative. And you can also find it in teas, tinctures, and capsules.
Right.
Okay. So, and by the way, again, I just want to point out, these are for preventative measures. This is not for treatment when you're having an onset necessarily of asthma, right? Because some situations do call for more drastic approaches, which we'll talk about in a second. Coconut oil is another one. Works on the nervous system, reduces inflammation, increases mineral absorption, in particular of magnesium, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And the important part here is that coconut oil is super easy. You can cook with it, but you want to get some of the whole virgin oil yourself, which you can just eat it, put a little bit of salt on there maybe, and just eat it straight. Or you can make teas with it, blend it into teas. You can put it in smoothies, things of that nature. So coconut oil is another one. Cordyceps. And most of these have clinical evidence of their effectiveness against asthma. A study published in the International Journal of Molecular Medicine stated that the extracts from cordyceps mushroom, quote, reduced the undesirable immune responses and or cytokine expression exhibited in asthma. All right, so there you have it. Immune system, powerful stuff for that, but also this helps to increase the oxygenation of your cells, improves what's going on with your insulin sensitivity, and this is the basis for that Shroom Tech Sport that we talked about at the beginning of the show. You know, so on its product, Shroom Tech Sport, this could be something to look into. And last one I'm going to share with you guys, magnesium.
That's it.
In one study, 300 milligrams of oral magnesium daily was given for asthma prevention for 2 months to 37 patients between the ages of 7 and 19 years. There was a placebo group here as well. Children in the magnesium group had fewer asthma exacerbations and used less medication compared with the placebo group. Bronchial reactivity and allergen-induced skin response were also reduced. Okay, so there it is in black and white. I really prefer a topical application of magnesium because you can't take so much orally because, again, you're gonna reach your bowel tolerance and it can cause diarrhea. So the topical form of magnesium that I use, I'm gonna put in the show notes. Really, really effective, 100% bioavailable. All right, so you're actually getting it. And what's going on here is that the fact that magnesium is responsible for over 300 biochemical processes in the body. And this means that your body can't do 300 things that it wants to do, that it needs to do to keep you healthy if magnesium's not present. And magnesium is it's the biggest mineral deficiency that we have in our country because it's a stress modulating mineral, and we're exposed to a whole lot of stress today.
So it shows how much we need it.
But also, you can take some orally as well as a backup. I would look to foods as well, first and foremost. Foods like spirulina is a wonderful thing for magnesium, or any green leafy vegetable. But the supplement form you could find in something like Magnesium Calm, which is a very popular product. And so those are some of the
like that too.
Those are some of the add-ins / supportive preventative nutrition for these 5 steps of preventing and reducing asthma naturally. You got me smiling here. All right, so now let's move on. The next few, we're gonna kind of breeze through these because they're a lot less complex as the things we've gone to. So we're in the home stretch, and I really appreciate you guys for taking all of this in because it's important and it's valuable, and you can truly transform your life or somebody you care about by adding some of this stuff in, employing some of these strategies. So step 3 in our 5 steps is to have frontline treatments and backups. Okay, so this is when asthma actually is showing its ugly face. Magnesium Sulfate Nebulizer, a randomized, double-blind controlled clinical study compared nebulized magnesium sulfate and nebulized albuterol in 33 patients with asthma. The study concluded that the serial doses of nebulized magnesium sulfate had bronchial effects similar to those noted with nebulized albuterol. So this is an option to turn to if you don't want to go with the kind of conventional drug. However, again, there is a place for these things. There's a place for steroids. There's a place for albuterol, for the Intol inhalers, whatever it might be for you or for the person you care about. We just want to do what's natural first. We want to get in a situation where we don't have the symptoms manifest.
There we go.
And then we do the lower hanging fruit things first. All right. But this is one of those things that just I wanted to put out there because it was interesting in the research.
Well, we need those options. And it's not always obvious to us. So, but that's not necessarily the case for us. So we needed to know.
Absolutely. So a lot of people out there might be big fans of essential oils. So peppermint oil is shown to have some positive effects with asthma symptoms.
Great for the bath.
Juniper oil. And here's another thing, coffee and black tea. Find a drink with caffeine. Caffeine's chemical structure is similar to common asthma medications, and coffee or black tea has been found to help relax the airways and reduce respiratory problems. And it's right there in black and white. This is kind of a known thing, is to get some caffeine in your body when you're having these kind of asthma symptoms, strong asthma symptoms come on. It's one of the frontline things that you can do first.
Okay.
Now, there's absolutely, again, I want to point this out, there's absolutely a place for drugs and inhalers, all right? But we just don't want to go on our entire lives treating symptoms, okay? We want to be able to, those things are to put the fire out. We want to create conditions where the fires aren't starting in the first place.
All right.
All right. All right, let's move on to step 4. All right, step 4 of our 5 steps to treat and reverse asthma naturally.
Let's get it.
Step number 4 is to cover the stress / psychosomatic triggers. Okay. So this can also be brought on by stress and by emotions. You know, some individuals know this intimately, that getting stressed out, worried, or emotionally upset can cause asthma symptoms to kind of activate. A University of Wisconsin study showed that mindful meditation techniques can help ease the symptoms of many conditions caused by chronic inflammation, including rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, and psoriasis. Why does this work? Why does this work? The bottom line is that meditation can help your body to shift to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is known as the, quote, rest and digest nervous system. A different activity of your hormones, a different activity of what's going on with your blood. All of this is going to translate to a lessening of symptoms in many cases. But again, this is something to do proactively as a preventative measure. And when somebody's going through an asthma attack, it's not like you need to meditate, you know?
They
However,
can't breathe.
being able to calm down and have this neural association to doing breathing exercise is going to be able to help them, because it's a panic response. It's a panic response when you can't breathe.
That's right.
Everything in your DNA is saying something is trying to kill you. You know, so to be able to have this experience is built neural association of meditation and breathing exercises is very, very powerful. All right, so mindfulness techniques. Let me share a couple with you. Counting your breaths. We just talked about this on the episode of A Day in Shawn's Life, A Day in My Life. And I'll put that in the show notes as well for you guys to go back to, and just talking about my personal meditation practice.
You can do this every morning.
Yes. And also repeating a word or phrase, which is also known as a mantra. So just saying, you know, breathing in and breathing out, I am whole and healthy, you know. Or breathing in, I breathe in energy and health, and I breathe in whole, and I breathe out wholeness, you know, or something like that. Or just continuously saying something, maybe it's a word or phrase. The kingdom of heaven is within me, you know, just kind of breathing that and feeling that while you're meditating. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard, you know, but who thinks about that?
We do now.
You know, it's a quote. It was, I believe it was like Luke 17:21 or something like that. I don't know how I know that, but it says you can't say here it is or there it is. No, the kingdom of heaven is within you, you know?
Exactly.
And so if you can sit and meditate on that, and then you start to realize how connected you are and how intimately powerful you are, a lot of this stuff becomes a thing of the past when we're talking about dealing with disease and thinking that something is incurable outside of the healing power of what created you and created all of this, and even created the words that I'm saying. That's just silly.
And the comprehension of the words.
That's just silly pants. There is a way. There's absolutely a way. All right, so saying a mantra, focusing on an object, or also focusing the mind through guided imagery sequence is another mindfulness technique. Okay, guys, so really important, step 4 is to have something to cover the stress / psychosomatic triggers. You have to have a practice. If you really want to kick the asthma to the curb for good, you need to have a practice like that. And now we're at our final step, step number 5 of our 5 steps to treat and reverse asthma naturally. Step 5 is to make sure that the basics are covered. Number 1 is the importance of hydration. There's a compound in your mucus called mucins, and their component, like I said, their component. Why you make that
mucus,
face?
Because it's like no,
it's so gross.
No, mucus has a component called mucins. That's just so appropriate. So packaged nice.
They are a family of highly molecular weight, highly glycosylated proteins, which is probably too much. TMI. But during periods of irritation from colds or allergies, high mucin content changes the consistency, making it thicker. Okay. When it's thicker, it gets clogged. So when your mucus, quote, gets clogged, that means that you have that inflammation is getting severe enough that the water content of the mucus is low, and so it's not moving. Okay. So we talked about before about the hose and it already being constricted from inflammation. Now the mucus content is, you know, has gone overboard. Now we have a serious problem. So just saying that the water content is reduced, what do we need to do? We need to proactively make sure that we're hydrating so that we're thinning the mucus out. Super simple, but who's doing it? I know I wasn't drinking that much water. I know I wasn't. So taking on the strategies of doing that inner bath every day when you wake up, drinking about a liter of high quality waters, puts you in a very powerful position to start your day. So that's a huge thing, is making sure that you're adequately hydrated and your kids are adequately hydrated every single day.
That's right.
If you want to kick this thing to the curb. Second thing is Probiotics. This should be a Captain Obvious here. Finnish researchers found that mothers can greatly reduce the risk of eczema and asthma in their children by taking probiotics, in particular acidophilus and bifidobacteria, while they are pregnant and breastfeeding. Babies normally get their mother's bacteria as they travel down the birth canal, but modern medicine is preventing this. Babies now born by cesarean section are not inoculated, which is basically they're getting inoculated by that bacteria from their mom. So the bottom line here is to make sure that you're getting probiotics. If you were in a situation where you weren't breastfed yourself, or your child wasn't breastfed for whatever reason, this is even more important, because basically they didn't get the right immune system formatting disc.
Right.
When they got downloaded to the planet, right? And so we want to make sure that we're proactive in finding adequate sources of probiotics. I'll put the probiotic that I use in the show notes as well.
Cool.
But you really want to look through this through food sources, so fermented vegetables in particular, like sauerkraut, kimchi, all those good things. And there's many fermented drinks out there as well, so things like kefir. So this is something to pay attention to. Probiotics are really, really important here. Last thing, children who breathe secondhand smoke are more likely to develop asthma. And among all youngsters with asthma, those who breathe secondhand smoke have more frequent asthma attacks. Smoking.
Gotta stop
I mean,
it.
Really? Really?
You
would do that around your child? Or you would, first of all, you do it to yourself, which is a little bit of a problem.
Well, we've all been in a place of unknowing or
the reality is this: is that there's some indigenous, like, historical value of actually smoking certain things, right? But you got to understand the situation that we're in today is far different from what we evolved doing. The whole concept of having the peace pipe, for example. Today we're seeing even though it might be $20 a pack, somebody's going to get that nicotine stick, and not understanding that it's a page full of chemicals and additives in that cigarette you're consuming.
Well, now we're talking about addiction,
right?
Which we got to address.
Yeah. But the bottom line is that you're really doing a lot of damage to your system. Yeah. Period. And not only that, once we take it a step further and understand that secondhand smoke is in fact a huge trigger for asthma and asthmatic symptoms, we've got to look this in the face and understand this is not appropriate to do around your children.
Period.
What you do to yourself is your right and your responsibility. But exposing your child to secondhand smoke and wondering why they have asthma symptoms, this is a wake-up call. It's got to stop. Don't even have it in the house.
Right.
So there you guys go. There you have it. Kind of ended it on a little bit of a tough love situation.
But it's love.
So to wrap everything up and to put a big bow on Asthma Awareness Month and real awareness about asthma. So make sure you share this show because it's important.
That's
this
right.
can literally save lives.
It's a gift. That's why we put a bow on it.
And also, it's understand that knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied is power.
There you go.
So you have to do something with this. If you want to see change, you have to do something with it. Knowing, that's just half the battle. What is that from G.I. Joe or whatever? But the reality is you have to put something in action. You don't want to be walking around like a human filing cabinet.
Sure.
Like I know all this stuff. I learned all this stuff from Shawn, from the Model Health Show. What are you doing with it?
That's
Are you making good happen in the world as a result?
Yeah.
That's what it's really about. So thank you so much for tuning into the show, and thank you even more for putting things into action in your lives and the lives of the people that you care about. And continue to share, continue to work on being the best version of yourself, and I'm going to continue to keep providing the most empowering, valuable, useful health information possible.
Life affirming.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, and I'll talk with you soon.
Take care.